I spent 11 years making myself useful. Not helpful. Useful. There's a difference, and it took me a long time to understand it. Helpful is when someone needs something and you step in. Useful is when people stop asking and just expect. When they stop saying thank you because the thank you is already built into their assumption that you will always show up, always handle it. Always be there with the spreadsheet and the confirmation email and the extra rolls of paper towels because you knew we'd run out. That was me. For 11 years, that was exactly me. My name is not important. What matters is the role I played. In my family, I was the one who remembered. I remembered that my mother-in-law is lactose intolerant but will eat cheese if you don't mention it's cheese. I remembered that my brother-in-law takes his coffee black but only in the morning and with cream in the afternoon, which makes no sense, but I never commented on it. I remembered everyone's birthdays, their dietary restrictions, their seating preferences at the dinner table, which cousins weren't speaking to each other and needed to be placed on opposite sides of the room. I was 31 years old, and I had been carrying a mental database of 47 people's preferences in my head since I was 20. It started small, the way these things always do. My husband and I got married young. I was 20, he was 23. His family was large and loud, and I wanted them to love me, so I did what I thought you were supposed to do. I helped. I offered to bring a dish to Christmas that first year. His mother accepted without even saying thank you, just nodded and said we'll need enough for 20. I made 2 casseroles and a pie. The second year, she called me in October to ask what I was making for Thanksgiving. Not if I was making something, what I was making. The shift had already happened, and I hadn't even noticed. By year 5, I was hosting. Not because anyone asked me directly, but because at the end of the previous Christmas dinner, his aunt had said we should do this at your place next year. You have the most room, and everyone agreed, and I smiled and said sure, and that was that. By year 8, I was doing more than hosting. I was coordinating hotel rooms for out-of-town relatives, rides from the airport, the dietary spreadsheet I kept updated in Google Drive that I shared with no one because no one ever thought to ask for it. I just used it myself when I was planning menus. I organized the gift exchange. I set the theme. I ordered the decorations. One Christmas, I spent $420 of my own money on things the family needed that no one had offered to contribute to. Tablecloths, extra chairs we rented, a second folding table because his cousin was bringing a new boyfriend and the head count had gone up. I didn't ask to be reimbursed. I didn't keep a record, I just paid it. My husband knew I did a lot. He would sometimes say you work so hard in a way that sounded like a compliment but was really just an observation, the same way you'd say it's really raining out there. Not an offer to help. Just a notation. I want to be fair. I chose this. In the beginning, I genuinely enjoyed it. I liked having a place in the family. I liked being the person who made things work. There's a real satisfaction in pulling off a dinner for 22 people that runs smoothly, where the food is hot and the wine is open and nobody's sitting next to someone they hate. But at some point the satisfaction stopped and the exhaustion started, and I kept going anyway because I didn't know how to stop. Because the machine was already running and I was the engine and nobody had thought to ask if I was tired. The year I turned 31, I started noticing things I had been choosing not to see. Like the way nobody offered to help clean up after dinner. Not once in 11 years had anyone stayed behind to help me do the dishes. My husband would sometimes carry a few plates to the kitchen, but then he'd disappear back into the living room, and I'd be alone at the sink for an hour while I could hear everyone laughing. Like the way they talked about my cooking. Not to me, but around me. His mother would say things like this is fine in the tone of voice that means it is not fine, but she is too polite to say so directly. His sister would eat everything on her plate, and then say next year maybe we do something different. His uncle would push the food around and ask if I had ever thought about taking a cooking class. I never said anything. I just made a note and tried harder the next year. The year I turned 31. I tried the hardest I ever had. I started planning in August. I researched recipes. I took a Saturday afternoon cooking class, actually, because his uncle's comment had gotten under my skin more than I wanted to admit. I made a menu and ran it by my husband, who said it sounded good without looking up from his phone. I ordered specialty ingredients online. I spent 3 weekends leading up to Thanksgiving doing test runs of dishes I had never made before. The Thursday itself, I woke up at 5 in the morning. I want you to picture the kitchen, the counter covered in cutting boards, the oven running since 6, the timer going off every 20 minutes for something, my husband sleeping until 10, coming downstairs, pouring himself coffee, saying smells good, and sitting down at the kitchen table to scroll his phone while I moved around him. By the time people started arriving at 2 o'clock, I had been on my feet for 9 hours. 24 people came that year. I had set the table the night before with the good dishes we only use twice a year. I had made name cards. Little folded pieces of cardstock with everyone's name written in my neatest handwriting. Because 2 years ago his aunt and her sister-in-law had ended up next to each other and there had been an incident. And I had spent the rest of that evening managing the fallout. The food was the best I had ever made. I know that sounds like something everyone says, but I mean it clinically. The turkey was properly rested, and the skin was crisp, and the inside was moist, which is difficult to achieve, and I had finally done it. The mashed potatoes were smooth, without being gluey. I had made 3 pies from scratch. We sat down. We ate. I watched people eat, and I felt, for the first time in a long time, a small, quiet pride. Not pride that needed to be acknowledged. Just private satisfaction. And then, his mother set down her fork. She didn't do it dramatically. She just set it down, the way you do when you're done. Except she had eaten maybe 4 bites. She looked across the table. Not at me, at her son. And said in a conversational voice that carried clearly across the table, "Your cousin Rachel made this exact same menu last Easter, and honestly hers was better. I don't know what she does differently." The table went quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then his father laughed and said, "Well, the pie is good at least." His sister said, "I think Rachel uses a different recipe." My husband said nothing. He was looking at his plate. Nobody looked at me. I sat there with my hands in my lap, and I felt something happen inside me. Not anger, exactly. Not the hot, quick kind. More like something that had been holding tension for a long time finally, quietly, let go. Like a rubber band that had been stretched too far for too long, not snapping, just going slack. I said, "I'll have to ask her for her recipe then." My voice was completely normal. I surprised myself. Dinner continued. People finished eating. His aunt said wonderful as always on her way out, which I noted was the first time in 11 years anyone had said anything resembling a compliment, and it was phrased in a way that sounded like a formality rather than a feeling. I did the dishes alone. My husband fell asleep on the couch. By the time I turned off the kitchen light, it was almost midnight, and I had been awake for 19 hours. I stood in the dark kitchen for a moment, and I thought, I am not doing this again. Not as an angry decision, just as a factual one. The way you might decide you are not going to keep touching a hot stove. Not a punishment for anyone, just a simple recognition of cause and effect. I went to bed without saying anything to anyone. The next morning I woke up before my husband and I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and I thought about what not doing this again actually meant in practice. Because the machine was already running. Christmas was 4 weeks away. People were already assuming. I had a folder on my computer called Christmas 2024 that already had a guest list, a preliminary menu, and a list of tasks with my own name next to every single one. I opened the folder and I looked at it for a long time. Then I closed it. I didn't delete it. I just closed it and didn't open it again. The first thing I stopped was the coordinating. His cousin from Portland always texted me in late November asking about airport rides and hotel recommendations. I had answered that text for 8 years. This year, when it came in, I read it and I put my phone down. She texted again 3 days later. I read it and put my phone down. I didn't block her. I didn't send a message saying I wasn't helping anymore. I just didn't answer. Which sounds passive but felt, for me, like the loudest thing I had done in years. The second thing I stopped was the gift exchange. I had organized it every year for 9 years. I sent the reminder emails in October with the rules and the price limit and the sign-up form I built in Google Sheets. This year, October came and went, and I sent nothing. By the first week of November, his aunt texted my husband. "Did someone send the gift exchange email yet?" My husband forwarded her message to me with a question mark. I read it. I did not respond to him. He forgot about it within 20 minutes, I assume, because he didn't ask me again. The third thing I stopped was the menu planning. Every year his mother would call me in late November to ask what are we doing for Christmas, and I would walk her through the whole menu, and she would make small dissatisfied noises and offer opinions I hadn't asked for, and then I would go home and make exactly what I had planned because her opinions were never about the food. They were about reminding me that she had opinions. This year, when she called, I said, I actually haven't thought about it yet. Silence on the line. Well, she said, we need to figure out the food. I know, I said. There's still a few weeks. I got off the phone. I still hadn't thought about it. December arrived. I went to work. I came home. I went to the gym. I read books. I watched my husband exist in his house without a single concern about whether Christmas was going to happen or not. And I thought, this is what it feels like to not be responsible for everything. It felt strange. Like a tooth that had been aching for so long you'd forgotten it was hurting, and then one day it stops, and the absence of pain is almost disorienting. 8 days before Christmas, his sister called me directly. Hey, she said, in the careful voice people use when they want something. Mom is kind of stressed about Christmas. She keeps saying no one has organized anything. I said. Is everything okay? Like, are you and my brother okay? We're fine, I said. Is there something specific you needed? Well, someone needs to figure out the food. Yeah, I said. Someone does. She paused. Are you going to do the menu? I haven't planned one, I said. You're all welcome to coordinate something. I'm happy to bring a dish. Another pause. Longer. A dish? Yeah. I was thinking maybe a salad. A salad. Or a pie, I said. I make a good pie. She didn't know how to respond to that, so she said she'd talk to her mom and hung up. The text started that evening. His mother, honey, I just want to make sure everything is okay. Are you feeling all right? I read it. Did not respond. His uncle, heard there might not be a plan for Christmas? Just checking in. His aunt, sweetie, just letting you know I'm happy to help if you need anything this year. Which was, to be clear, the first time in 9 years she had offered to help with anything. His cousin Rachel, the one whose cooking had been compared to mine favorably at Thanksgiving, texted, Hey, your mother-in-law called me asking for my recipes. What is going on over there, lol? That one I did respond to. I just sent a laughing emoji. My husband, to his credit, noticed something was happening around day 3 of the text flurry. He sat down next to me on the couch one evening and said, My mom has called me 4 times today. That's a lot, I said. She says you're not answering her. I've been busy. He was quiet for a moment. Are you doing Christmas? I looked at him. What do you mean? Like, are you planning it? I haven't planned anything, I said. Why? He didn't have an answer for that. I watched him try to locate the question behind my question and not quite get there. It's just, he said slowly. Everyone usually knows what's happening by now. They do, I said. Because I usually tell them. I haven't told them this year. Right, he said. So are you going to? I set my book down. I spent 9 hours on my feet on Thanksgiving, I said. I woke up at 5 in the morning. I tested those recipes for 3 weekends. I spent, and here I paused because I hadn't planned to say this. But once I started, I kept going. I spent somewhere between 4 and 5 hours organizing just the seating and the ride coordination for people coming in from out of town. And after all of that, your mother told a table of 24 people that your cousin's cooking was better. He opened his mouth. And you said nothing, I said. Nobody said anything. And I smiled and said I'd ask for her recipe, and then I washed 24 people's dishes by myself until midnight. He was very quiet. So, I guess my question for you is, I said, why would I do that again? He didn't answer right away. He looked at his hands. He said, eventually, I should have said something. Yes, I said. You should have. I'm sorry. I know, I said. And I meant it. I wasn't being cold. I was just also not going to let sorry function as a reset button that put us back at the beginning where everything was the way it was before. That's not how it works. Sorry is a start, not an ending. Christmas happened that year without a host. His mother ended up ordering catering, which cost 3 times what my homemade dinner would have cost. And according to his sister, the turkey was dry and one of the dishes was mislabeled and his uncle ate something with cream in it by accident. They did the gift exchange, kind of, but nobody had organized it properly. So, 3 people got no gift and 2 people gave to the same person. I brought a pie. It was a good pie. Salted caramel apple with a lattice crust I had been perfecting for 2 years. I set it on the counter, and I did not explain it or apologize for it or manage anyone's expectations about it. I just put it down and walked into the living room and sat next to my husband and had a glass of wine. His mother found me near the end of the evening. She came and stood next to me in the kitchen, and I could see her working herself up to something. "The pie was delicious," she said. "Thank you," I said. "I hope you know," she started, and then stopped and started again. "I hope you know we all appreciate everything you do." I looked at her. She wasn't a bad person, I want to say that. She was a woman who had been given things for a long time without being asked to notice them. And so, she had stopped noticing. That's a human thing to do. It doesn't make it right. "Thank you," I said again. "Are you going to go back to hosting?" she asked. And there it was. The real question. I thought about the August planning and the October spreadsheet and the 5 a.m. alarm on Thanksgiving morning and the midnight kitchen and the rubber band going slack. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe someday. But not right now." She nodded slowly. She didn't understand, I think. But she nodded. That spring, I took a trip. It was the first trip I had taken purely for myself in 11 years. I went with 2 friends from work. We went to Savannah, Georgia, because one of my friends had always wanted to go, and none of us had any reason not to. We stayed in a small hotel near the historic district. We walked everywhere. We ate at restaurants where I had no dietary restrictions to remember for anyone, where I hadn't researched anything in advance, where I just looked at the menu and ordered what sounded good. On the second evening, my phone started going with messages from his family about Easter planning. Who was hosting? Was I doing the ham again? Had I found a good egg dye kit for the kids? I read them the way you read things that don't quite belong to you anymore. I put my phone in my bag. I ordered another glass of wine. I want to tell you what I learned, not as a lesson. Not wrapped up neatly with a conclusion. Because real things don't wrap up neatly. But here is what I know now that I didn't know before. I know that being the person who holds everything together feels like a contribution, and sometimes it is. But when the people you're holding things together for never notice the holding, when they only notice the moment something slips, then you're not contributing anymore. You're just infrastructure. And infrastructure doesn't get thanked. It just gets taken for granted until it breaks. I was so afraid of breaking that I never stopped. I thought if I stopped, the whole thing would fall apart and somehow that would be my fault. What I didn't understand was that the falling apart was never my responsibility to prevent. The falling apart was the information everyone needed and had been protected from for 11 years. The catered Christmas with the dry turkey? That was information. The missing gift exchange? Information. His mother calling Rachel to ask for recipes? Information. The family discovering that the thing I did for years was actually a thing that took effort and planning and care and didn't just happen by itself? All of it, information. I couldn't have given them that information by telling them. I had to give it to them by stopping. My husband and I went to couples counseling starting in January of that year. I want to say that because I think it matters. He's a good person who had drifted into a pattern without examining it. The way good people do all the time. We had work to do, and we did it. That's an ongoing project, not a resolved one. Things are different now. Not perfect, different. Last Thanksgiving, he woke up with me at 5 in the morning. He stood at the counter, and he made the mashed potatoes while I handled the turkey. He did the dishes after. Not all of them, but he was there, at the sink, next to me. And the kitchen light went off at 10 instead of midnight. His mother said the food was wonderful. I said thank you, and I meant it. I still have my Google Sheets folder. I still keep the dietary spreadsheet because old habits are comfortable and also because I genuinely don't want his uncle to accidentally eat cream. But now when I open it, I notice how much is in there. I notice the weight of it. I don't carry it without noticing anymore. That's the difference. Not that I stopped caring, I still care. I still cook, I still organize, I still show up. But I stopped being invisible to myself in the process. I think that's what I needed to learn. Not how to stop giving, but how to see myself giving. How to treat my own time and effort and creativity with at least a fraction of the seriousness I gave to making sure nobody sat next to someone they didn't like at Christmas dinner. I was worth noticing too. It just took me 11 years, one dry catered turkey, and a very good salted caramel pie to figure that out.